Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. This is part 2 of our 3-part series on cultivating psychokinesis. With me is Dr. Joe Gallenberger, a clinical psychologist, author of Inner Vegas, Creating Miracles, Abundance, and Health, and also Liquid Luck, the Good Fortune Handbook, as well as a number of CDs with meditation exercises on them. Joe is a senior trainer at the Monroe Institute near Charlottesville, Virginia. Welcome again, Joe.
Thanks for having me back.
It's a pleasure to be with you. In part 1 of our 3-part series, we talked a lot about your personal journey as a person who had experienced out-of-body experiences and then began to cultivate psychokinesis and for about 5 years made regular trips to Las Vegas for the purpose of learning how, in effect, to control the dice.
Yes, dice and slot machines using psychokinesis out here. This is a playground, actually, to learn about psychokinesis. Yeah.
And I think it's important to say you found the environment in Las Vegas high energy, exciting.
Yes. Needing to be balanced with grounding and quiet, but in smaller doses, very wonderful.
'Cause I know some people, especially people of a spiritual bent, tend to think of Las Vegas as negative energy.
Well, I think you can get anything you want in Las Vegas, and it's intensified. So if I were in a real bad mood, I might see the person who should have gone home a long time ago. But if I'm in my psychokinetic state, the neon is more beautiful. I see the love between people, the hope in people's eyes. I tend to be very positive so that people are smiling back at me, and crews get to know me and all. And even last night, our waiter took, I think, a $140 bill and made it into $23 just because we get along well, you know. So for me, there's a lot of loving interactions out here, for even with the bellman and housekeeping.
Well, to use a vernacular, it seems as if your approach to cultivating psychokinesis is about getting high. Not on drugs, but
yes, getting in touch with very high energy and though grounding at the same time, being still connected to the earth and being in the here now present moment. So it's not a fuzzy kind of high, but rather your consciousness is very sharp and you're articulate, and if it's going ideally, you're still, though, in a very expanded state.
A higher state of consciousness, an expanded state of awareness. Well, and during the time that you were cultivating your own psychokinesis, you were also an instructor at the Monroe Institute.
Yes.
Which is an organization that has specialized in various techniques for putting people into specific altered states of consciousness.
Yes, they have been researching something called hemisync using the audio signal for over 40 years. And some independent universities have verified that when the brain is exposed to this, you get greater synchrony between the hemispheres, and various brainwave states we might be looking for, like the meditative states, are more prominent. And the thing I love, Jeff, about the Monroe Institute, there's no dogma. I was there when 2 Buddhist monks in their late 80s were there, and they came down mid-program, just said, "You Americans with your technology are taking places that it took us decades to go," and they are very appreciative. So we see atheists, Republicans, Democrats, fundamental Christians, Buddhists, all kinds of people coming through, shamans, and they feel comfortable that they're not having to get their beliefs challenged and adopt some other belief system in order to participate. And that really appealed to me.
So you were using some of these Monroe techniques.
Yes.
When you came to Las Vegas, you would have audio tapes or CDs to help you enter into those specific states.
Definitely, and they're very helpful.
And you were accustomed to working with groups at the Monroe Institute. So the next stage naturally then would be to bring groups here to Las Vegas.
I thought that would be, in much of the science literature and psi research, like remote viewing, we might see that if 60% of the experimental team believe it is possible, the results would be about 60%. If you get 100% or close to it of belief, then you get better results. So initially, Laurie Monroe at that time was in charge of the Institute, Bob's daughter. And she said, Joe, I know you well enough that you'll be impeccable with this. She gave me the privilege of folks that I had trained at Monroe Institute, offering them the possibility to come out for an inner Vegas adventure, is what we call it. And so I knew those people already knew how to meditate, were used to intense group interaction, altered states of consciousness, and were quite open-minded. And that's just the kind of people I wanted to have as students. So we started with that, an exclusive invitation to Monroe graduates, and now it's expanded to include anyone, but we do an individual interview on the phone, because we're not interested in folks that are greedy or needy. Greedy in the sense of I want to make a killing, needy that I need to win to pay the house payment, or I'm out of, I'll be kicked out of my house, because we're using this for the purpose of greater learning. The psychokinesis is really our feedback training device.
In other words, it's not about the money.
No. It's about the money only in PK being results driven. When you get a reward of money, I'll give you the example. When we're at the table together, we get tables reserved just for us. If you can manage to feel at one with everybody else, out of your own ego, in touch with spirit, deeply grounded to the earth, feeling abundance and love in your heart, you usually get rewarded with money within seconds. If you go into greed, fear, ego, you get punished by withdrawal of money. So much like teaching a dog to sit with treats, the money is a reinforcement.
It's sort of instant karma.
Yeah, an instant reinforcement to learn a more enlightened way of living, really, I think.
Well, it's very convenient, I suppose, that an enlightened way of living also seems to pay off financially.
Yes, yes, and I think we can have win-win. I meet many, many good people on a spiritual quest. And there's two things often that are not there when they're not doing well. If relationships aren't going well, if their health is poor, finances are poor. Biggest one is they're not grounded. They don't fully embody their bodies and fully want to be here on planet Earth, because it's a rough planet. The second is when I say, how many of you are seekers of wisdom? And all the hands go up. And I say, wouldn't you rather be a finder? It's a different energy. And so this psychokinesis area works with both energy and belief. Not only that I can bend a spoon or I can roll dice, but the underpinning beliefs in our culture, nothing good comes easy, no pain, no gain, have to be cleared to really let you feel really comfortable moving into more of your potential.
So how do you address the no pain, no gain meme?
Pointing it out as if you feel that, then healing cannot be instant. Okay? We have specific meditation exercises we do where we use visualizations to get rid of that. One I like that a lot of people have fun with is we imagine being in a field and there's a pile of dead branches, and each branch represents the dead frozen energy in one of these beliefs, like no pain, no gain. And then we imagine a wood chipper, and you hear that sound and you make it in meditation, that as the branch goes through, converted back into mulch that you then fertilize your abundance tree with. So it gives a very active and deep meditation way of transforming that belief and softening it. And then if you can get some evidence that, oh, this good came instantly, so I guess and without pain.
Yeah.
And then new experience, most people begin to log that and go, okay, I'm reframing my reality. Things can be easier than I thought.
I see. This is very interesting to me, Joe, because in our first interview, you described, especially toward the end of the interview, how you had to work through a pretty severe depression, had to process the suicide of your own brother. So these things were extremely painful for you, and I'm under the impression that they actually took years to work through.
Yes.
But when you're working with groups, you're basically saying that there are certain visualization processes that you can use with people to get them through some very serious emotional blocks. I'm assuming people are going to come with issues comparable to your own, perhaps, and that it can be done much more quickly.
Yes, and definitely psychotherapy and other things are very much needed in some situations. But at least we can create a temporary suspension of the usual way the person's thinking about life and of themselves. One woman came to the group in deep grief. Her daughter had died, and she left smiling after 3 days. And then I got a report a few weeks later. She had won $38,000 in penny slots, 5,000 at a time, different places. So she was able to begin to shift. She was at a place in her grief she could do that. You know, if it had been earlier in the process, maybe it would have been even more appropriate for her just to be home wearing black and crying. You know, but particularly things that have been hanging around a while, and the person would feel, I'm ready to let this go. Those things can be often released in really nice ways if the energies are high.
Well, that's very heartening. And one of the other things that really intrigued me about your work with groups in Las Vegas is, as opposed to the work you did by yourself in Las Vegas, is learning how to work with the group energy.
Yes. And Jeff, this is important. I think a lot of us are getting our acts together as individuals pretty well. But if you've ever had 18 people try to order a pizza, you know, it's bedlam. I don't like anchovies and you don't like mushrooms and that kind of thing. And so to get a group coherence where everybody has the same goal and they're out of ego and they're supporting, it's a real team play, if you will, they're supporting the roller who's rolling while it's their turn. That's a challenge, but I think it's a useful yoga to learn to get better results in community meetings and other situations as well. And so that's one of the delights for me, is helping people take that step and see how powerful they are as a group if they're coherent in intent and they are very good-natured and well.
And you also work with the idea of sending energy to, say, to the person who's rolling the dice, for example.
So we have a person stand either side like an arch, an energy arch. Just seeing each other, these two people, and with deep love and respect. And then the shooter walks into that between them and feels more stable, calmer space. And then the rest of the table is sending energy, almost like a healing circle, seeing that shooter in their highest and finest. In fact, they're not thinking any numbers, they're not trying to do change the PK outcome. We leave that to the person with the dice. And that tends to work very powerfully. You know, some people kind of burst into tears saying, I'm feeling so much love. Other folks will kind of lose their grounding, take off, much like in a massage, a person just goes out. But that arch is encouraging them to stay here and grounded and absorb all that energy coming to them. And then they usually do well.
I was fascinated by reading about how in some of the dice games in which the woman who's now your wife was a participant in your workshops, and she started out being really, I guess, self-conscious and a bit depressed, unable to work well with the dice at all, and eventually became quite excellent at it. But one of the ways that you assisted her was by placing the bets so that she didn't have to focus on the strategy of betting. She could simply focus on the rolling of the dice.
Yeah, so we use a team to help with that, because PK, from my point of view, is an energy and an intent of the mind, and it's involving getting out of our dominant left brain and into both a whole brain state, which then makes it easier to access the heart intelligence and the gut. We're finding there's intelligence centers in the abdomen as well. And so within that, as if you're trying to decide what to bet and all these complicated rules in the game, that's very left brain. And so if we assist the person, at least initially, like learning piano notes, as they're kind of learning things, by taking as much of the left brain tasks away from them as we can. Again, there's a lot of action at a dice table. They can just close their eyes, and then one of their energy arch people can whisper to them, the dice are ready, when they're ready to pick up and roll. And that helps a lot. So we set up a training environment where we're trying to make the impediments as easy to overcome as possible, because once a person feels it, they can much more easily lock that back in again, oh, that's what you're wanting.
And knowing that you're with a supportive and safe group of people gives somebody the comfort to actually close their eyes in the middle of a dice game in Las Vegas. I imagine when you were by yourself, that wouldn't have been such an easy thing to do.
Yes, it was really lonely at the beginning, but I did cultivate, like I said, relationships even with the waitress, and I'd get to know how many kids she had and how they're doing and share pictures. But when you'd be at the table, it was, you know, I'd like to go to tables just myself and the crew. But second best would be if there's other people there, then where are you from? And see if we could get a little feeling of community going. But you know, closing the eyes probably would have been not done.
So in other words, while you were talking about the period before you began bringing groups to Las Vegas, you began to try to cultivate a group feeling just amongst the people standing around the craps table.
Found that was important. Again, there's even a book on the feng shui of PK now at the dice table, that a conducive environment is a positive environment, and that's not necessarily what's going on there. You know, human nature would be, if you rolled and I lost money on you, I might go darn, and the next person, oh, double darn. If you rolled and you didn't do so well, we would cheer you, and the next person, and we'd keep the energy positive, and it might be person number 4 that takes off into, we've had 90-minute rolls, which are incredible statistically to get that.
And when that happens, I gather, even though I live in Las Vegas, I don't gamble, but I gather that when you've got a person who's hot at craps, and a lot of people gather around, and the energy is generally, everybody's excited, and other people will bet along with that person and make money because they see he has a hot hand or she has a hot hand.
So the challenge of psychokinesis state is a little fragile at the beginning until you get into the zone. It's very similar to the zone in sports. Once you're in the zone, 2 people could be smoking cigars across, you know, and you'd say, what cigar? You wouldn't even, you know, you'd be in the zone. But initially it's fragile. And once you're winning well, then strangers are happy too, you know, and the happiness goes up exponentially. But that first 10 minutes is the challenge of getting it going to a positive place. And then even strangers in a group usually support that.
And I gather from time to time you run into either crew members at a casino or other gamblers who are deliberately trying to rattle you?
Very, very rarely.
Uh-huh.
There's something called a don't better.
Mm-hmm.
They bet exact opposite. They bet with the house.
Yeah.
So they're going to bet that you're going to lose.
Mm.
They may be the ones that would be most active trying to, quote, mess with you.
Mm-hmm.
There's good casinos, Jeff, and not so good. And so there's been places which are closed now in Vegas, or if you went in and you started winning, they would start mispaying you, slowing down your drink coming, start looking at you, maybe even making faces as a dealer, try to rattle you. But a good house, which is most of them, they celebrate winners.
Yeah.
Because we're not, again, as we said in the first show, definitely not out to kill them. So we're betting very small amounts of money relative to Vegas. And they film us, you know, with security cameras.
Yeah.
And they see that part of the casino gathers more people, and when we leave, we're finished our session, a bunch of people jump on, because the myth is that the table's hot, not the rollers. And so they're comfortable with what we do in a good house. But some places you would get hassled. Places we go, you don't.
Now, in the field of psychology, there are a lot of superstitions that have been identified and fallacies that gamblers often tend to have. How about with psychokinesis? I'm sure there's a lot of folklore.
Yeah, and in fact, what I think of is remote viewing Joseph McMonagle, one of the remote viewers 001. As he began to think, well, you know, I need it quiet, then I need this, then I need that, and until you have to have Tuesday with the moon in a certain position.
Yeah, Joe is a classic. He has his favorite socks to wear for remote
But then
viewing.
he did blow that out, and he wanted to do it, you know, anytime, anywhere. And so you do have to work with that, but frankly, if I have a losing session, I'll probably change my shirt. And there's a lot of myth in dice, like if you roll them off the table, it won't be good next. When I ask dealers what's true in superstition, they say the only thing is true is scared money loses. And that's true in life. If you're more afraid of rejection than finding your soulmate, if you are more afraid of joblessness than finding your ideal career, you're going to have trouble. And definitely in psychokinesis, the same thing. If you're afraid of failure, it's going to be tough. And so it's almost physics. If, you know, desire is 80% and fear is 20%, things will come to you quite well. But if it's 60-40, it ain't happening, or happen with glitches. So we look at really reducing fear as low as possible.
And and you do that, I guess, by the various visualization exercises.
Yes, visualization, meditation. We use heart-opening music because I think fear clouds love, and at the same time, love is like sun. It dissipates the cloud of fear. So it might even be something like the song "The Rose" or "You Light Up My Life," or, you know, inspirational songs. But to get people there, it's, you know, you can show movies of kitty cats being born or whatever. Most people will go into an open-hearted state, but they won't stay there very long. So our challenge is to make that a continuous flow, rather than, oh gee, I just saw a beautiful reunion in a family on Facebook or something, and I feel really good for now, but now 10 minutes later I don't. Now I'm
So
worried
working
about
with the group helps you to do that. The support the group members can offer each other.
Sure.
And I gather that you mentioned earlier the aura, but you've also alluded to the chakras and the subtle energy system that's described in many Eastern traditions. And Western esoteric traditions. So you're cognizant of that in the work you do.
Yes, we're looking at energy. You know, if the group feels good with each other, they have a strong root connection, root chakra connection, for example. If you go into the heart area, the heart chakra, people might feel it as a dinner plate sized warmth or something. And so in that terms, the chakra system being very open and flowing is very good for psychokinesis, in my experience. I'm amazed, actually, Jeffrey, that we get such good results in laboratory experiments as we do, because usually the subjects are fairly unmotivated. Might be undergraduates looking for extra credit. The lab studies, often the task is kind of boring when you have to repeat it 100 times. Many things that are very antithetical to the Vegas crap table environment. So I have it easier than the scientist in the lab, I think, to
I think it's
produce the
fair to say
phenomena.
that a lot of experimenters who engage in parapsychology research have excellent experimental training. Their scientific methodology is usually in excess of what other academics are doing. They're very rigorous in their work, but they're not necessarily skilled in cultivating psi. They're skilled in measuring it rather than cultivating it.
It's interesting, psychologists as a group are less receptive than other scientific disciplines. So many of the researchers started in physics or in engineering, electrical engineering as well. And so they listen to people like me and whatever, and they go, okay, so we'll have a pretty light turn on when the results is going the way they want. And I'm saying, okay, pretty light's good, but it gets boring after 50 trials. The slot machine paying you money, now that can stay interesting longer.
Not to mention the group energy.
Yes, and the group energy and dice, because then people, you're helping everybody have more financial abundance. They cheer you. You're the king for the day as you're doing well, or the queen. So I think that motivational set is very important.
It reminds me of the work of a British researcher named Batcheldor, who began replicating table levitations using psychokinesis by replicating what he took to be 19th century spiritualism, where they got together and sang and told jokes and really had a good time. And the seances in those days were not somber affairs.
Interesting.
At all.
I didn't know that, because the pictures in black and white always look like they're very serious.
Well, Joseph Gallenberger, thank you once again for sharing this half hour with me. It's been a great pleasure.
Sure, it flew by, Jeff.
Yes, it did.
I really thank you for having me on.
And thank you for being with us. Check your listings for part 3 of our 3-part series on cultivating psychokinesis.